All right, let's move to a different U.S.-financed armed and backed war, which is the Israeli war in Gaza. When we've spoken about that over the last 6 months or so, 7 months since it began, you often expressed frustration that obviously a lot of people shared about how unwilling the Biden administration seemed to be to impose any limits on the Israelis at all. They just kind of, here's all the weapons, here's all the arms, here's U.S. diplomatic protection, do with it what you will. 10 days ago or so, the Biden administration announced what they called a temporary suspension of certain weapons being transferred to Israel, presumably in retaliation for the fact that Biden declared the invasion of Rafah to be a, quote, red line, and Netanyahu immediately said, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway, and then did, maybe not in full, but certainly did it to a significant extent. A lot of Israel supporters look at that and say, this is a abandonment of Israel, Biden hates Israel, et cetera. Whereas a lot of people on the left who support the Palestinian cause are saying, oh, this is pure theater, this is just symbolic, the Israelis already have all those weapons, it's just very temporary. He then announced just yesterday, the day before, another $1 billion in arms to Israel. Where on that spectrum do you fall in terms of how you see this announcement of a suspension?
Well, I think Biden's pathetic, sad, very weak. I'm not sure how much he's really in command and with it, but he's very weak. And he is unable to communicate properly with his people, that's us, with the American people, and certainly unable to carry real diplomacy with Israel and with the Arab and Islamic states. So I think he probably is pissed off at Netanyahu, who could not be. But Biden's too weak to do anything about it. And in order to do something about it, yes, he would face domestic political opposition. He would face the Israel lobby, which is real and it's powerful. He would face calls from both parties. He would be told, don't do this, by his political advisors. But you know what? Presidents are hired actually to do things that keep the world from blowing apart. That's, if they do their job, that's their job. And Biden should stand up and say, no more, Bibi. We're not doing this anymore. And there is going to be two-state solution. And we're voting in the Security Council for UN membership of Palestine. And Biden should explain to the American people what this is all about. And he would find overwhelming support. He'd actually probably get a big boost for his reelection, because what he's doing right now is utterly unpopular and utterly against the will of a large part of the American people. It's clear. Only about 30% say they support Biden's approach in the Middle East. So he fails to communicate. He fails to take any action. I don't think it's a fake. I think it's just he's a very ineffective president.
The times we've talked before about the Israeli war, we've talked a lot about what their motive is. Like, what are they really after in this onslaught that has no end? And we talked about, you know, the stated goal is to destroy Hamas, eliminate Hamas, make it no longer existing in the Gaza Strip. Other Israeli officials obviously want, because they've said, a complete annexation by Israel of both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. They consider it part of Greater Israel. I think now there's starting to be a pretty big recognition that Israel isn't going to achieve any of those goals. They're not going to eliminate Hamas. There's no chance of that. And they also have no plan for what will happen to, who will govern Gaza after this is done, when you have 2.2 million Palestinians there. How is Israel going to possibly manage that at the same time when you have them expanding their control of the West Bank? It seems to me, I guess I'm wondering whether you agree, that a big part of the Israeli motive at this point is simply a desire for vengeance and bloodshed, kind of a hatred that has been accumulating against Palestinians in that country, a leadership that has encouraged that. And then October 7th, understandably, like 9/11, provoked a lot of anger and rage and desire for bloodshed in the United States, provoked that as well, but it didn't endure for this long. What are the Israelis doing in their mind? What do you think is their thinking behind all of this?
I don't think it's simply vengeance and bloodshed. I think it is calculated, but like the calculations we talked about with regard to Ukraine, I think the calculations are wrong, but they're very clear calculations. The calculations of the Israelis, encouraged by both Trump and Biden, is you can have it all. You can continue to essentially be so-called Greater Israel, meaning you don't have to really make any political concessions. You can run an apartheid state. You can essentially have control over the occupied Palestinian lands, and you can have peace with the Arab neighbors. That was Trump's idea, the so-called Abraham Accords. And that is Biden's idea until today, which is we can entice the Saudis by giving F-35s, by giving nuclear technology, by giving a defense agreement. We can entice the Saudis to normalize relations with Israel despite what's happening right now, despite a genocide and despite everything. Through all of these incentives, Israel becomes secure. The Saudis are happy. The Arab world's it's okay. The losers are Palestine, and we get on with it. That's the calculation. I think it's not only cruel and immoral, I think it's dead wrong. And I don't find these people very bright. I have to just say it. I don't think they calculate right. I don't think they understand what they're doing. I think it's an extraordinarily weak team and a very weak president. But I won't necessarily name individual names, but these people running around to Riyadh and so forth and then announcing we're close to an agreement with the Saudis. This is tactical stuff. The thing that is different for you and for me, we actually think, my God, 50,000 people dead, probably, or 100,000 people dead. Of course, the official count's 35,000, but we know that it's multiples of that because of all the uncounted deaths, direct and indirect. But I don't think they count those numbers the way we do. They don't even count 500,000 dead in Ukraine as all that big a deal. I mean, after all, what's 500,000 people when we're talking about the stakes of global hegemony? So I think one difference is the cruelty is completely normalized among these players who sit around as if they're playing a game of Risk on the world map, and they don't find this so profoundly awful, horrific, deadly the way they should, and the way you and I do. But I think this is the calculation that, come on, why compromise? I mean, the Arabs are close to accepting life as it is. The Palestinians, well, this has been going on for decades. And I think that, like the other calculations, no, I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to suddenly agree on the basis of getting some F-35s to normalize relations with Israel. They keep saying every week when the U.S. Somehow unofficially signals that, they say, no, there has to be a Palestinian state. We have the Arab Peace Initiative since 2002. We have the Arab and Islamic leaders statement from Riyadh last November, and we say it every time, but you don't hear. And then the U.S. again with Blinken, who's, very weak and very pathetic, unfortunately, and not at the top of this game. Saying, oh, we're gonna negotiate, and there are a few of them around negotiating. So they're gambling the same way. They don't count the Palestinian deaths as being some horrific fact. Of course they should, but they don't. And that's what the gamble is. The gamble is that we can get a normalization of relations with the major Arab states without a two-state solution.
Yeah, you could almost tolerate it a little bit more if they were just sociopaths disregarding the value of life that they're ending, if they were very cunning strategists. But the fact that they're also inept and incompetent in that makes it sort of the worst of both worlds. In the little time we have left, I want to ask you about China. But before I get to that, I just need to ask you about the following, given that you've been around academia for a lot of your career. You still are. There's obviously a big controversy over campus protests that have broken out, including at your school, over people, young people, seeing all these images who do value these 35,000 lives at least. And as you say, it's far more than that, and they know it's coming. And there has been a crackdown on their right to protest, on their right to speak. Not people who are necessarily engaged in civil disobedience, but people who are just chanting things or who are a common, frequent presence on American campuses. What do you make of this? It seems like that free speech and the right to organize and protest is being run roughshod over because the cause of shielding Israel is so important. But you're closer to these campus protests than I. So what do you make of what's been going on there?
Well, I'm very proud of the students. They see an outrage of grim historic proportion, and they're protesting. And I'd be very worried if they weren't protesting. We're watching a genocide take place, and our students are protesting. And I say, thank God they're protesting. We're watching something absolutely horrible transpire, and students are aroused across the country to protest this and to state their opposition. This has caught the political class and the administrators of the universities completely off guard. When you tell lies, like our government does for a living, and one of the lies is we support the two-state solution, blah, 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 you don't expect truth to appear. And the fact that young people are aghast at Israel's actions is a shock to the political advisors to Biden in his reelection, a shock to the Israel lobby. How dare they? This is a pro-Israel country. We've never heard from young people about this. And the administrators are basically, responding in a completely wrong way to the pressures from Congress and from their donors. And they panicked, and they did it all wrong. And they have really profoundly ruptured one of the most important institutions of any country's life, which is its universities and young people who need an environment to learn to be critical and to think critically and to understand what's happening in the world. I was on a call today with university presidents around the world, and one from New Zealand pointed out that in the New Zealand university law, this is a law, the universities are identified as the critics and conscience of society. I thought, how wonderful and how completely different from the American situation now, where you have these dunderheads in Congress basically trying to break the university life, and you have administrators doing their bidding for them. So it's very sad for America and very dangerous, and huge abuse of the students who are afraid, who have been arrested, who have been expelled, who have been suspended for doing nothing more than speaking the truth and calling out the crimes of Israel and the United States, which is utterly complicit in this, and gotten the police landing on their heads for what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I always conceived of universities, of academia, as being the most important bastion to protect the right of dissent. I always thought that that was why professors have tenure, why there's academic freedom, precisely because that's the one place where we're going to allow dissent of all kinds to kind of thrive in order to make sure we have open discourse. And as far as the students are concerned, I think one of the main reasons why they're so motivated is because they've seen what's going on in Gaza really for the first time because of social media, things like TikTok, and that's why the government, again, is so eager to take those platforms away, because they're getting to see the truth, and that's the one thing we can't have. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.